"You're too cheap to carry my blood," the millionaire spat, turning his back on the woman he claimed to love. She disappeared, but what he didn't know was that her story was far from over. 2 years later, everything he thought he controlled would be turned upside down, and nothing would ever be the same. Hello, my beautiful souls. I am your storyteller, James, and welcome back to our channel, Mr. James Family. Before we begin today's story, let's take a moment for a beautiful prayer. May your hearts be filled with love, your days be bright with hope, and your lives be blessed with happiness, peace, and strength. May every challenge you face turn into courage, and every dream you hold dear find its way to you. If you feel this prayer in your heart, comment Amen below. And let's start today's journey together with open hearts and minds. Alex Vanderbilt III had been raised to command rooms without trying. He walked through life as if everything bowed to him before he even arrived. Yet the day Dr. Isabella Reyes stepped into the boardroom, something shifted. The room stilled. The executives leaned forward. Even the air changed. Her presence didn't demand attention. It claimed it. She moved like someone who had fought for every inch of respect she carried. Her dark eyes held a sharpness that could dissect a lie in seconds. Her voice, steady and warm, rolled through the room with conviction. She wasn't intimidated by old money. She wasn't impressed by legacy. She wasn't dazzled by the Vanderbilt name. She was there for science, for truth, for the work she believed could change the world, and Alex, who had seen 1,000 presentations, felt something unfamiliar. Curiosity, then admiration, and then a strangely disarming pull. He found himself watching her instead of her slides, watching the way she gestured with purpose, watching the way she challenged objections without hesitation, watching the way she refused to shrink for anyone. It unsettled him. It intrigued him. It made him feel more alive in 1 hour than he had felt in years. When the meeting ended, she gathered her documents with calm precision. She didn't look his way. She didn't seek his approval. She simply nodded once, thanked the room, and left. Alex stared at the door long after it closed. Something inside him whispered, "Follow her." But he didn't. Not that day. Not with his mother watching. Not with the board expecting perfection. Yet the memory of her lingered like a spark, refusing to die. He saw her again in the research wing 2 nights later. The building was nearly empty. Most lights were off. She sat under one lamp, surrounded by notes and molecular diagrams. Her hair was tied up haphazardly. Her lab coat was wrinkled, and she was absolutely, breathtakingly focused. Alex had never admired focus this much. He approached with slow steps, unsure why he felt nervous. Bella didn't look up until he was 3 feet away. When she finally met his eyes, he forgot his rehearsed greeting. She wasn't intimidated. She wasn't flattered. She simply acknowledged him like any other coworker. "Long night?" she asked. "Longer now," he tried to joke. She didn't laugh, but she smiled, just a hint. It was enough to make his chest tighten. That night became another, and then another. The late hours became their quiet rhythm. 2 people who should have never crossed personal boundaries began orbiting each other with dangerous ease. It started with coffee. She brought him one without asking. He pretended not to notice the softness in the gesture. He returned the favor the next night, pretending it meant nothing. They debated research protocols, ethics, funding. They argued, God, they argued, but always with passion, never with malice. He loved the way she challenged him. She loved the way he listened when no one else did. Accidental touches became intentional pauses. The space between them grew smaller, electric, breathless, unspoken. The kiss happened on a night neither of them expected. A power outage shut down half the lab. They stood in the emergency lights, silhouettes glowing amber. She apologized for something trivial. He stepped closer. telling her she had nothing to be sorry for. Their words tangled, their breaths collided, the silence thickened, and then he kissed her. Or maybe she kissed him. Neither of them could say who moved first, but neither of them pulled away. That moment became the beginning of everything. They built a world hidden from the one they lived in. A rented cabin buried under winter snow, where Alex learned how to hold her without worrying about cameras. A small apartment near Central Park with mismatched mugs and her perfume in the sheets. Science conferences where they booked one hotel room, laughing like teenagers running from trouble. Alex became addicted to the feeling of being human around her. No titles, no pressure, no legacy strangling him. Just a woman who saw through every layer he had been forced to build. And at night, when the world went quiet, he whispered dreams he had never dared to speak aloud. Once I take full control of the company, once my mother steps back, once the board stops breathing down my neck, once I can breathe, really breathe, I'll choose you. I'll choose us. Bella believed him, not because she was naive, not because she needed saving, but because she saw the boy he had been before wealth and duty crushed him. The boy still fighting to escape a gilded cage. The boy whose heart whispered truths his mouth wasn't brave enough to say. She didn't realize how deep that cage went, how cold the bars were, how vicious the keeper was. Eleanor Vanderbilt had shaped her son's spine with steel and fear. She controlled the company like a monarch. She watched every move Alex made, every relationship, every vulnerability. Bella was a threat, not because of who she was, but because of who she could make him become. Bella underestimated that. She underestimated the power of a mother who saw love as weakness. She underestimated the ruthlessness of a dynasty built on bloodlines. She underestimated the lengths they would go to protect a name. And she underestimated how tightly Alex was still tethered to a world she could never belong to. Their love was real, but the shadows around it were growing darker. And none of them, not Alex, not Bella, noticed the matriarch watching from behind a frosted glass wall. As Bella left the research wing that night, unaware of the cold eyes following her, Eleanor Vanderbilt whispered to her assistant, "Bring me everything on Dr. Isabella Reyes. Every secret, every weakness." Bella had rehearsed the moment in her head 100 times on the way to his penthouse. She imagined Alex stunned, then overwhelmed with emotion. She imagined him pulling her close, pressing his forehead to hers, whispering that everything would finally fall into place. She imagined him choosing her, openly, fearlessly. No more shadows, no more secrecy. The elevator ride felt like floating. She held her coat to her chest, palms resting over her belly, a small smile tugging at her lips. She had never felt so full of hope, so sure, so ready. But the moment she stepped into the penthouse, that hope cracked. Alex wasn't sitting, he wasn't pacing, he wasn't confused or excited or even surprised. He was standing perfectly still, like a man waiting for a verdict, his shoulders stiff, jaw clenched, eyes hollow, not the eyes of the man who had once held her as if she were the safest place in his world. "Alex," she breathed, trying to read him. His throat moved as if swallowing glass. The last drops of evening light spilled through the windows, casting him in a pale glow. There was fear in it, yes, but something else, too, something colder. When she told him, when the words "I'm pregnant" with twins left her lips, she watched the color drain from his face. He looked like he'd been punched, not by responsibility, not by shock, but by something darker rising up behind his ribcage. He didn't reach for her. He didn't move toward her. He didn't whisper her name the way he used to when emotion overwhelmed him. He whispered nothing, for too long. Then finally, in a voice strangled by panic, "Bella!" "No." She blinked. "No." His hands shook once, barely visible, before he forced them behind his back, as if hiding weakness. This can't happen. It wasn't fear of fatherhood. She could see that immediately. It was fear of someone else, fear of a force she couldn't see yet, but could feel creeping into the room like a shadow sliding across the floor. "Alex, they are your children," she said softly, carefully, like trying to soothe a skittish animal. She expected him to fold, to break, to come back to himself. Instead, he snapped. "No," he said again, louder, harsher. "You don't understand what my family will do." Her heart thudded painfully. "Your family?" This wasn't about a board or timing or stress. This was about bloodlines, legacy. His mother. He dragged a hand through his hair, pacing like a trapped lion. "They care about blood, Bella. Vanderbilt blood. Everything is lineage. Everything is purity." Her voice trembled, not from fear, but disbelief. "I don't care about your family." That should have been the moment he reached for her. That should have been the moment he said he didn't care either. That love mattered more. That she mattered more. Instead, he froze. The silence stretched too long, too sharp. And then, with a voice that did not belong to the man she loved, he delivered the words that would live in her bloodstream like poison. "You're too cheap to carry my blood." The world cracked, the air thinned, her heart stuttered and then dropped like a stone. He wasn't finished. The cruelty hadn't reached its peak. "I'll give you $5 million, he muttered, as if discussing a business inconvenience. "Just fix this mistake." A mistake. Their children. Their love. Their years together. Something inside Bella went silent. Absolutely silent. Her eyes didn't water. Her voice didn't break. She just stopped recognizing him. This wasn't Alex. This wasn't the man who had traced poetry across her back at midnight. This wasn't the man who had whispered that she was the heir he had never known he needed. This was a stranger wearing his face, a stranger shaped by fear and legacy, and a mother who pulled his strings. Bella set her bag down gently, almost ceremonially, as if letting go of the last piece of innocence she had left. She stared at him, not with anger, but with a pain so deep it almost looked calm. $5 million, she said slowly, as if tasting the bitterness of the words. "For our children." Alex flinched, but the damage was already carved into his soul. He opened his mouth as if to explain, as if to soften the blow, but there was no softness left to offer. She stepped back. One step, two, enough to make the room feel colder. "I never knew you," she whispered. And in that instant, Alex's facade cracked, just slightly, a tiny tremor in his mask. But it was too late. Bella grabbed her coat, her keys, her pride, and walked out of his penthouse. The elevator door slid shut between them with a metallic hiss. He didn't follow. He didn't call her name. He didn't run down the hall like a man terrified of losing everything. He stood frozen in his marble palace, watching the ghost of the only woman he'd ever loved disappear. He told himself it was necessary. He told himself it was temporary. He told himself it was protection. But the truth echoed in the hollow of his chest. He had just sacrificed the future he didn't realize he wanted more than the empire he feared losing. And he didn't even know it. Not yet. But the consequences of that night were already spreading, quietly, invisibly, like cracks beneath polished marble. Far below the penthouse, as Bella stepped into the cold night air with trembling hands, she felt something shift inside her. Not fear, not heartbreak, but a sharp, sudden tightening beneath her ribs. A warning her body whispered before her mind could understand it. Something was wrong. Something far worse than Alex's betrayal. Bella's life became a map of shadows. Every street she walked felt unfamiliar. Every apartment smelled temporary. Every name she took belonged to someone else. She kept moving, never staying long enough to leave a trace. The city lights blurred past her like a painting she couldn't touch. Even the air seemed to whisper caution in every gust. She learned quickly which noises meant danger, which eyes lingered too long, which cars followed too often. At night she curled in small, sterile hotel rooms, staring at the ceiling. Her mind replayed Alex's words like broken glass. "You're too cheap to carry my blood." She had repeated them aloud in the empty rooms, tasting the bitterness of every syllable. But even pain had to yield to survival. She pressed her hands against her stomach and felt the soft rhythm of the twins within her. Two tiny heartbeats, resilient and stubborn, like everything she had ever loved. Her lips whispered promises. "You will survive. We will survive. No one will take you from me." Meanwhile, Alex's nights grew restless. He scoured her known addresses, even called old colleagues under false pretenses. Every phone call ended in static. Every apartment was empty. Every friend she had confided in said she had vanished. His chest ached. He woke in sweat-soaked sheets. He dreamed of her face turning away from him, of her disappearing forever into a world he could not reach. Then the memo arrived. Simple, bureaucratic, lethal in its clarity. Neuroxin toxicity reports, autoimmune collapse, long-term nerve damage. Alex read the words and felt the air leave his lungs. Every pulse in his body screamed danger. His mind raced back to Bella's last lab notes, to the careful tests she had run, to her insistence on higher scrutiny, to her warnings, dismissed lightly by the board. It all matched, every symptom, every warning, every calculated risk she had begged them to reconsider. She hadn't left because of heartbreak. She had left to survive, to hide from a company that would destroy her to protect a product, to protect a lie. He realized too late how deep the rot went. His mother had known. Eleanor Vanderbilt had known and chosen profit over life. The board had known, had colluded, had smiled and signed. And Bella had become a threat simply for speaking the truth. The woman he loved, the mother of his children, marked for eradication. Guilt roared through him like wildfire. Alex blamed himself in every private hour. He could still hear her voice, whispering calmness into his chaos. He could still see her steady hands adjusting slides and pipettes in the lab. And now, those hands were in jeopardy. Every night he imagined her in danger, alone, facing something far bigger than him. He hadn't protected her. He hadn't even tried. Meanwhile, Bella fought with meticulous precision. She found doctors who didn't know her past, doctors who didn't care who she was. She took pills with precision, injected substances under sterile light, signed forms with aliases. She became an enigma even to herself. Her body was fragile, her energy drained in waves, yet her spirit refused to bend. At night, when the twins' fists and toes pressed against her stomach, she whispered stories of courage and defiance. "Your father chose his name over you, but I will never choose silence," she murmured. Every heartbeat inside her belly answered in defiance. She built routines, careful steps, multiple hiding spots, false addresses, untraceable phone numbers. Every step designed to shield her from the reach of the empire that had tried to take her life. She memorized emergency routes, safe houses, doctors who didn't ask questions. Every aspect of her life became a calculated chess move. Alex, on the other hand, spiraled. He began obsessing over financial reports he had ignored before, product trials, internal emails. Every communication from the board suddenly felt sinister. Every decision he had made in arrogance now carried a shadow of complicity. He realized that the very empire he had been groomed to love, trust, and protect had betrayed him, and the woman he loved. She became more than a memory to him. She became a ghost haunting every corner of his conscience. He pictured her smiling, exhausted, lonely. He imagined her holding their children, teaching them survival before she could teach them love. He imagined her whispering to the twins, "Your father will learn too late." In the meantime, Bella's strength grew quietly. She moved through life like a shadow, precise and silent. Every pain endured became a layer of armor. Every sleepless night became fuel. Every fear faced became a lesson. Her mind stayed sharp. Every day she read studies, compiled evidence, tracked anomalies. She wasn't just surviving. She was preparing for a reckoning, even if it came years later, preparing to face the man who had once promised the world, only to abandon it. She trained her body to withstand the physical toll of illness. She trained her mind to remain focused despite exhaustion. She trained her heart to love fiercely in the darkness, for her twins and herself. Alex's panic became all-consuming. Even in the boardroom, behind his polished mask, he shivered with unseen fear. The memo haunted him. Every new report, every toxicology note, every forgotten lab finding became evidence of his failure. He thought of Eleanor, her pride, her dominance, her insistence on purity, her willingness to sacrifice humanity for legacy. He thought of Bella again, not as a memory, not as a fleeting kiss, but as the mother of his children, the woman he had let slip into danger, the woman whose silence he had failed to protect. And he realized that every decision he had ever made for the company, every compromise he had allowed, had consequences far beyond spreadsheets, far beyond balance sheets, far beyond his own conscience. Bella held the truth close, even as exhaustion clawed at her bones, even as her body betrayed her, even as danger lingered unseen in corridors of power she could never confront openly. She whispered to the twins nightly, their tiny fingers brushing her face, their soft kicks against her abdomen. "Your father chose his empire over you, but we will survive. We will endure. We will be seen." Every whispered word built a fortress around them. Every precaution became another brick. Every sacrifice another layer of defense. She had become invisible, yet unstoppable, a ghost in the corridors of the empire she had once served, a mother wielding courage as a weapon. Alex, meanwhile, had become restless. Even sleep offered no escape, every phone call unanswered, every office meeting hollow, every glance at her vacant apartment haunted by her absence. He began tracking anomalies he had once ignored, emails deleted too cleanly, reports filed suspiciously late, funding diverted without explanation, and he realized with a chill that rooted him to the spot that Bella's absence wasn't random. It wasn't a choice born of heartbreak alone. It was a warning, a survival tactic. She had vanished because she knew too much. She had vanished because they had tried to silence her. And she had survived because she had no other choice. The Empire had tried to poison her, both literally and figuratively, and she had escaped with nothing but grit, intellect, and the heartbeat of her unborn children. Every night when Alex stared at the ceiling, he knew one thing. He had failed her. He had failed them all, and the shadow of what he had allowed would not fade quietly. Bella, alone in her temporary refuge, allowed herself a small, sharp smile. The twins stirred inside her, tiny fists punching lightly, demanding attention. She whispered again, "We are not victims. We are weapons. We are truth." And in that moment she realized something. The fight wasn't over. It had only begun. Late one night, Bella opened a file she had never dared touch before, a confidential report buried deep in the company's internal archives. Her hands trembled, her breath caught. Inside were names, dates, experiments, deaths, and one name stood out in bold at the top, Eleanor Vanderbilt. Bella froze, heart hammering. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was war. Bella sat in the dim light of the small apartment, the twins asleep beside her, their tiny breaths soft and even. She watched them and felt a fierce swell of something she had never felt before. Responsibility fused with defiance. Every day, every night, every heartbeat became a lesson in survival. Lucas and Liam weren't just children. They were her shield. They were her weapons. They were her hope wrapped in small human forms. From the moment they could hold a crayon, she taught them strategy. How to notice patterns, how to see danger before it arrived, how to document truth carefully, meticulously, without leaving traces that could be followed. Lucas took naturally to the organization. Even at 6, he could arrange medical files with precision, noting every anomaly, every hidden report, every suspicious email they had collected. His small fingers traced graphs and charts with uncanny accuracy. Bella marveled at his mind, recognizing a reflection of her own analytical fire in him. Liam, on the other hand, was the heart, sensitive, expressive, intuitive. He drew everything he saw, every threat, every victory, every emotion. His small sketches of a woman fighting a dragon with a sword captured their lives in ways words could not. He created images that turned despair into hope. Even in danger, he drew a light, a path, a story that whispered, "We will not break." Together they became a silent army under her guidance. She never let them see her fear. She never allowed exhaustion to show. Even when her body ached, she carried herself as a fortress. The twins mirrored her strength without realizing it, tiny reflections of an indomitable will. Bella never sugar-coated the truth. She did not shield them from the reality of their father's absence. She told them openly, calmly, firmly, "Your father chose his empire over us." Lucas's young face set hard, his small jaw clenched. "Then he doesn't deserve us," he said, voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath it. Liam looked at her differently, his brown eyes searching, piercing. "Does he know what he did?" he whispered, almost afraid of the answer. Bella took a breath. "No." "Not yet," she said honestly. The words hung between them, heavy but truthful. And it was in that moment she realized these children were not victims waiting to be rescued. They were allies, partners, soldiers trained in the art of endurance, preparation, and moral clarity. Every day they practiced subtlety. Lucas learned to scan documents for irregularities. Even in elementary arithmetic, she taught him to note patterns, discrepancies, numbers that didn't add up. She trained him in observation, in deduction. Every piece of information could be a weapon later. Liam learned to communicate through visual storytelling. Each drawing was a coded map of emotion, strategy, and warning. She encouraged him to capture the world as it was, not as he wanted it to be. He began to understand that art could reveal truth when words failed. Bella's nights were filled with whispers and lessons. She taught them to ask questions, to never accept authority blindly, to notice every change in tone, expression, or movement, to record what others might miss. Every lesson was a brick in the foundation of their hidden rebellion. At the same time, Bella had to protect her own body and mind. Illness lingered like a shadow at the edge of every room. Her energy ebbed and flowed unpredictably. Yet she could not allow it to weaken the twins' training. She learned to move silently through pain, to project strength even when trembling inside. Her body was a map of suffering, yet her mind became sharper, faster, more vigilant than ever. She had allies, though invisible to the world, doctors who believed in science over profit, activists who worked in the shadows, careful, precise, legal. Each small connection became a lifeline. Every call, every message, every cautious step brought her closer to a time when the truth would emerge. Lucas began documenting their own timeline of threats and inconsistencies. He wrote notes no one else could read without explanation. Liam drew events as they happened, capturing the essence of danger, triumph, and resilience. Together, they created a visual and factual archive that was both evidence and legacy. Bella watched them transform before her eyes. From tiny, vulnerable infants, they grew into something powerful. Warriors in small bodies, children who could fight without violence, who could win without weapons, who could endure without surrender. Even in the quiet moments, she trained them. Every shadow in the apartment became a lesson in vigilance. Every unexpected noise, a drill in reaction. Every stranger's glance, a test of perception. They never spoke of revenge. They spoke of justice. They spoke of survival. They spoke of truth. And slowly Bella saw her reflection in them. The sharp intellect, the unwavering courage, the refusal to be silenced. She had given them more than life. She had given them purpose. A mission that would define them long before they understood the weight of it. Alex was still out there, oblivious, haunted by guilt he could not yet comprehend. But for Bella, the children's growth, their courage, their tiny victories became a shield. It became a reason to endure. It became the armor around her fractured body. They practiced every night. Stories whispered, lessons in disguise, math turned into patterns, art turned into warning, play turned into preparation. Lucas's sharp eyes caught small inconsistencies in hospital forms, documents Bella missed, hidden details others considered trivial. He asked questions no child should know to ask, but Bella encouraged him. Liam's art turned darker as the children aged, capturing not despair but strategy. Dragons were not villains, dragons were empires. And the mother wielded a sword. The twins drew every fight, every triumph, every close call. Bella never stopped teaching. She became both parent and general. Every decision measured, every action deliberate. They grew confident, they grew daring, they grew vigilant. And yet, in their hearts, the innocence of childhood clung stubbornly. They did not yearn for a father. They did not beg for attention. They wanted justice. They wanted to know truth. They wanted to be ready. Bella smiled quietly when Lucas folded charts perfectly. She hugged Liam as he showed her a drawing of her standing atop a mountain, the empire below. She whispered encouragement, praise, and caution. Every word deliberate, every gesture protective. She trained herself too. Every day, every night, every hour. Medical routines, exercise, mental drills. Every ounce of her being focused on survival. The twins became extensions of her mind, body, and will, small reflections of her resilience, carriers of her mission, silent but potent. Through them she found joy. Through them she found purpose. Through them she found the reason to endure beyond fear, beyond exhaustion, beyond despair. She never allowed herself to falter, not in front of them, not even in solitude. Her heart remained steel, tempered by love and necessity. And in their small hands and young minds, she saw the seeds of something extraordinary, something that could challenge even the empire that had tried to destroy her, something that could turn pain into power, weakness into strategy, silence into truth. The night ended as it always did. She tucked them in, whispered lessons, whispered protection, whispered love. Their small hands pressed against her, reminding her she was not alone. She would not fail them. She would not break. Not now. Not ever. The twins dreamed quietly, oblivious to the storm brewing outside. Yet inside, their mother's eyes remained open, vigilant, calculating. She knew the Empire had underestimated her. She knew the Empire had underestimated the twins. And she knew that one day the truth would not just survive, it would strike. As Bella turned off the lights and slipped into the shadows of her small apartment, she noticed movement outside the window. A sleek black car, unmoving, its engine silent. A shadowed figure stood watching, patient, deliberate. Bella froze. Her heart skipped. The Empire had found them. And this time hiding would not be enough. 2 years had carved themselves into Alex like jagged scars. The man who once ruled boardrooms with a mere glance now walked halls filled with whispers of betrayal. The empire he had once believed unshakable trembled beneath him. Arranged marriage, a union forged in prestige and expectation, collapsed in quiet devastation. Not a fight, not a scandal, just emptiness, a hollow echo of what should have been life. The board had turned on him. Every decision he made was questioned, every report scrutinized with a magnifying glass sharp enough to pierce his reputation. Neuroxin complaints had multiplied. Lawsuits, investigations, angry letters, frightened families. Every corner of the company turned hostile. His own employees looked at him differently now, not with respect, with wariness, with fear. And in the midst of his unraveling, one night, one quiet, unbearable night, he saw her, her voice unmistakable, burning through the speakers of his television. The footage blurred, the camera hiding her identity. But the fire in her words, the sharp precision of her arguments, the undeniable presence, Alex knew. It was Bella, his Bella. She had survived. Not just survived, she had thrived. And the calm authority in her voice carried something more terrifying than anger. It carried purpose. She was coming for him. The realization shattered him in ways no business collapse ever could. Alex followed the trail with the desperation of a man clawing for life, not for power, not for wealth, but for the faint, fragile thread of redemption. Every contact he made, every lead he followed, every late-night call brought him closer. Closer to her, closer to the truth he had avoided for so long. The door opened, and the world stilled. Bella stood there, taller than he remembered, fierce, unyielding. The twins stood behind her, small but formidable. Lucas with sharp eyes that mirrored Alex's own analytical intensity. Liam with the quiet fire of judgment and pain in his gaze. They weren't children anymore. They were sentinels of everything he had lost. Alex froze. The air felt too thin. The universe compressed into the space between them. Time slowed. Every breath weighed heavily. Every heartbeat echoed in his ears. Bella, my God. His voice broke before he could stop it. It was a sound he hadn't made since he was a boy, vulnerable, exposed, human. Her gaze pierced him, unrelenting. You lost the right to say my name, she said, the words sharp, deliberate, final. It was not anger, it was judgment. It was the verdict of a life betrayed. Lucas stepped forward. Small body, immense authority. We don't need you, he said plainly, with the clarity of someone who had already made up his mind. Liam's voice came next, soft but cutting deeper than any steel blade. Why did you hurt Mom? The words struck him with force, sharper than lawsuits, sharper than boardroom attacks, sharper than Eleanor's cruelest manipulations. His chest tightened, tears formed unbidden, rolling down a face that had never shown weakness in decades. He cried in front of them, exposed, fractured, undone. But tears were insufficient. They could not repair the years lost. They could not undo the betrayal. They could not erase the damage inflicted by fear, by pride, by a mother who valued legacy over life. Bella did not step closer. She did not soften. She waited. She always waited. Her eyes were calm, cold, resolute. And when she spoke, the words carried the weight of inevitability. If you want redemption, she said, her voice steady, unwavering like steel wrapped in silk, destroy the empire that destroyed me. Alex's mind reeled. Destroy the company he had built, nurtured, believed in. Destroy the legacy that had defined him since birth. His identity, his family's power, his reputation, everything lay in her command. And yet, in that instant, he realized it was the only path to salvation. He could no longer hide behind wealth or influence. No more excuses. No more pleading with the mother who had already chosen her side. No more avoiding the consequences of his own silence and cowardice. He swallowed hard, the taste of despair thick on his tongue. His eyes flicked to the twins, small warriors, forged in a fire he had helped ignite. They did not flinch. They did not falter. They simply waited, guardians of the woman who had survived because he had failed. He knew he would have to fight, not for control, not for reputation, but for truth, for justice, for the chance to become the father they deserved. The empire itself was a maze of deceit. Contracts, stock options, legal loopholes, false testimonies, bribed scientists, silenced whistleblowers. Every corner he turned revealed a layer of corruption deeper than he had imagined. And yet, he had been blind. Blind in arrogance. Blind in love for a name. Blind in obedience to a mother who would have crushed anyone who opposed her. Bella watched him, not with expectation but with measurement, every reaction, every flinch, every whisper of hesitation catalogued. The twins mirrored her vigilance. Even in their youth, they understood stakes higher than many adults could fathom. Their mother had raised them to see truth clearly, to act decisively, to survive no matter the cost. Alex took a step forward, tentative, unsure, but necessary. He had no weapons, no leverage, no shields, only the remnants of his conscience, only the echo of the man he had once been, buried beneath wealth and fear. Bella's eyes narrowed. Not in anger, not in hate, in expectation, a silent command that he rise to the challenge or perish beneath it. The twins moved slightly, as if reinforcing the invisible barrier between him and their mother. Alex's throat tightened. He swallowed hard, his heart pounding in ways he had long forgotten. He realized that redemption would demand more than contrition. It would demand sacrifice. It would demand betrayal of everything he had been raised to defend. It would demand courage beyond any he had ever known. And yet, there was no turning back, no negotiation, no compromise. The path was laid before him, fraught with danger, moral ruin, and personal devastation. But it was the only path. He looked at the twins again. Their young faces reflected determination, pain, and unwavering loyalty to the mother who had shielded them from his failures. And he knew in his core that he could not fail them. The empire that had once defined him now loomed as the enemy. The name Vanderbilt, once a crown, now felt like chains. The walls of his world closed in. Every secret, every lie, every betrayal waited to crush him. And yet, for the first time, fear and guilt fused into purpose. He nodded slowly, almost imperceptibly. Bella noticed, her lips pressed together in acknowledgement. The twins stiffened, attentive, waiting for the next move. He would have to dismantle everything, step by step, piece by piece. And nothing, no boardroom, no lawyer, no family, would stop him if he hoped to reclaim even a fraction of what he had lost. It was a beginning and an end, all at once. And in that quiet apartment, a shattered man, a determined woman, and two small warriors prepared to face a battle that would consume them all. The next morning, as Alex returned to his office for the first time in weeks, he opened a confidential envelope slipped under his door. Inside was a single note in Eleanor's handwriting. "You dare defy me? You will regret seeing her again, and this time you will lose everything." Alex's hands trembled. The Empire was awake, and it was coming for all of them. Alex walked into the boardroom with a weight pressing on his chest, heavier than any ledger, heavier than any expectation, heavier than the bloodline he had been born into. Every step echoed like a drumbeat of rebellion. The walls seemed taller, the room colder than it ever had. Eleanor sat at the head of the long, polished table, her eyes sharp, predatory, waiting for weakness. The board was assembled, every face a mirror of entitlement, arrogance, and blind loyalty. They expected a speech of reconciliation, an appeal to legacy, an obedience to tradition. But Alex had no intention of obeying any more. He cleared his throat, steadying the tremor he could not entirely mask. "I'm whistle-blowing." The words hung in the air, heavier than gold. The silence was suffocating. He could see the disbelief flicker across every face. Eleanor laughed, slow and cruel. Her amusement was venom, dressed as elegance. "Do you think that woman and her mutt children are worth destroying a legacy older than this country?" she sneered. The term mutt sliced through him like a blade, but it also ignited something feral, something resolute. "They're my sons," he said, voice firm now, rising with clarity and defiance. The room trembled slightly, as if the walls themselves had not expected it. Eleanor's face contorted, a mix of rage and incredulity. "They are impurities," she began, voice cold, venomous, dripping with disdain. But he did not flinch. He did not step back. For the first time in his life, the chains of family expectation snapped entirely. He opened a laptop. Files, documents, internal memos, falsified reports, emails, hidden spreadsheets, all illuminated in front of the board's eyes. Every lie the company had cultivated for decades now bared itself. Every cover-up, every poisoned patient, every silenced whistleblower. The evidence could not be denied. The empire, the bloodline, the legacy, all stood exposed. He sent encrypted emails to regulators, journalists, and Congress representatives. He leaked internal reports, financial misconduct, experimental fraud, every executive bribe, every cover-up, every falsified clinical trial, exposed. The room shifted uncomfortably. Whispers began, fingers fidgeted, pens tapped nervously. The board realized the man they had groomed, the son they had raised to obey, had turned into their greatest threat. Eleanor's voice rose, sharp, lacerating. "You cannot do this. Do you understand what you're risking?" Alex ignored her. He felt something he had not felt in decades. Freedom. The fear of losing power was nothing compared to the weight lifted from his conscience. He had a chance, finally, to right the scales of injustice. The board tried to retaliate, to lock him out, to threaten lawsuits. Every tactic they used crumbled against the momentum he had built. For once, his identity was not tied to money or influence. It was tied to morality, to redemption, to the chance of reconciling with the woman he had wronged. Outside, news alerts began to flicker on phones, TVs, and computers. Vanderbilt Pharmaceuticals, once untouchable, was unraveling live before the world's eyes. Headlines screamed fraud, negligence, poisoning, corporate corruption. Alex felt a strange calm as reporters began to dig deeper, calling executives, investigating past experiments. The empire he had been raised to serve was collapsing, and he welcomed it. He thought of Bella, of the twins, of every night she had spent hiding, fighting, surviving. He imagined her whispering to the boys, teaching them to endure, teaching them truth. He thought of the sacrifices she had made, and he knew, without hesitation, this was the only way to honor her, to protect them, and to finally make amends. The company fought back aggressively. Lawyers filed suits. PR teams released statements defending the empire. Executives tried to discredit him. But every move was countered by documents, evidence, and witness testimony he had secured. Each lie they told fell apart under the weight of undeniable truth. Eleanor was livid, her control slipping, her plans unraveling, her legacy crumbling. She screamed, tried to intimidate, to remind him of who he was, who he should be. But he no longer feared her. He no longer obeyed her. The fear that had shaped him since childhood had evaporated, replaced by determination, clarity, and resolve. He contacted whistleblowers who had remained silent out of fear. They came forward, emboldened by the fact that the son of the empire was now dismantling it from within. The tide had turned. What was once a fortress of deceit became a labyrinth for its own architects. Alex knew this battle would cost him everything: his wealth, his status, his family name. All were gone or in jeopardy. But in their place, he found something far more valuable: purpose. A chance to reconcile with the past, a chance to save lives, a chance to honor the woman who had fought alone and to fight alongside the sons who had been trained for truth, justice, and courage. He spent long nights coordinating with journalists and regulators, every disclosure carefully timed, every document verified, every loophole closed before it could be exploited by the remaining executives. He had become a soldier in Bella's war, not just for truth, but for the moral redemption of a life he had wasted chasing legacy. The Empire fought hard. Executives tried to smear his name. They threatened lawsuits, public scandals, media manipulation. But Alex stood firm, protected by the undeniable evidence and the moral righteousness of his cause. The magnitude of her courage, the clarity of her testimony, demanded attention, demanded justice. Alex rose when she finished, stepping to the microphone beside her. For the first time, he admitted every betrayal, every concealment, every moment he had allowed the Empire to prioritize profit over life. The words tore through him like fire. He betrayed his name, his wealth, his bloodline. He admitted complicity in every cover-up. And yet the act of confession, of alignment with truth, felt more liberating than any empire had ever provided. The room was silent for a heartbeat longer than seemed natural. Then murmurs erupted. The legislators absorbed the weight of their testimony. Journalists leaned into microphones, cameras focused, flashes blinking, capturing a moment that would reverberate across history. Alex watched Bella closely. Her face was serene, almost ethereal in its resolve, but he noticed the tremor in her hand, the pale skin, the fine lines of exhaustion, the subtle weakness that betrayed her mortality. And his chest contracted painfully. He had survived corporate ruin, legal backlash, and personal shame. But nothing had prepared him for this. The sight of her giving everything, risking everything with nothing left to protect herself. Vanderbilt Pharmaceuticals began to crumble within days. Investigations confirmed every allegation. Stock prices plummeted. Executives resigned or were arrested. Regulators issued immediate recalls of neuroxin. The drug was eradicated. Justice, slow and deliberate, was finally delivered. Eleanor was arrested, her cold power dismantled piece by piece. The matriarch who had dictated the terms of Alex's life now faced the consequences of decades of cruelty and corruption. Alex watched from the sidelines, feeling a strange mix of relief, triumph, and devastation. Bella's victory was monumental, yet the cost of it was undeniable. The strength she had displayed came from a body ravaged by illness. Her immune system fragile, her health fading, her energy spent like sand through fingers she could no longer control. She turned to Alex as they left the chamber. Her voice soft, almost a whisper, carrying the weight of mortality and truth. "I'm dying," she said, and the words fell like stones into his heart. Alex's knees weakened. He had faced corporate empires, deceit, and betrayal. But nothing had prepared him for this. The woman who had given him the chance for redemption, who had fought for truth, who had survived against all odds, was slipping away. He held her hands, rough and unsteady, trying to anchor himself, trying to anchor her. Tears streamed freely, something he had rarely allowed himself in public, in private, or in the dark corners of his own shame. "I won't lose you," he whispered, though the tremor in his voice betrayed him. Bella smiled faintly, her lips pale but determined. You've already won, Alex. Redemption is not mine to keep. It's yours to carry forward. Her eyes glimmered with love, pain, and fierce pride. The twins watched silently, their small hands gripping hers, absorbing every lesson in courage, sacrifice, and unyielding truth. In that moment, the Empire's ruin felt insignificant. The money, the titles, the power, meaningless. What mattered was survival, love, and the truth that could never be bought or silenced again. Alex realized he had been given more than a chance to rebuild his life. He had been given the chance to witness courage that dwarfed his own, to learn from a woman who had transformed suffering into power, and to protect a family forged not by blood, but by truth. Bella's breathing was shallow now, each inhale a whisper of effort. He pressed his forehead to hers, silently promising to honor her legacy. The room around them, the cameras, the reporters, the world, it all faded. Only her, only the twins, only the battle they had fought together remained. And in that fragile, radiant moment, Alex understood fully. Freedom was not wealth. Freedom was truth. Freedom was courage. Freedom was love that endured beyond betrayal, beyond empire, beyond even death. As the chamber emptied and the echoes of applause faded, Bella's face paled further. She whispered to Alex, her voice trembling, "There's something I couldn't tell you, something in my treatment. It may not last." Alex gripped her hands tighter. Her fragile body trembled. The victory that shook a nation now hung on the edge of a knife, her life itself. The months after the congressional hearings were surreal. The empire Alex had known, the legacy he had defended, had crumbled, and in its place, a new world was waiting. Bella moved slowly, her body fragile, every step measured, every gesture cautious. But her mind, her spirit, remained unbroken. She had no illusions about her remaining time, but she carried herself with dignity, grace, and determination. Her final mission was not vengeance, not recognition, not wealth. It was to build memories. Memories for her sons. Memories for Alex. Moments that would outlast her. Alex, once consumed by ambition, control, and arrogance, now found himself in unfamiliar territory. He learned to slow down. He learned to notice small details, the way Lucas's brow furrowed when concentrating, the way Liam's hands trembled slightly as he sketched a new mural. He learned the cadence of simple joy, the laughter that erupted from their small apartment when a dinner experiment went catastrophically wrong. He learned to cook. Not well, not elegantly, but enough that the twins could eat and smile. He learned to read aloud, stumbling over words, correcting himself with patience he had never possessed before. Every night he read stories, embellishing voices, creating worlds that did not exist but carried truths of love, courage, and resilience. Bella watched him, sometimes with a smile, sometimes with a weary sigh. She knew he was learning, unlearning the arrogance of a Vanderbilt heir, unlearning the false notions of legacy. She saw the small victories, a repaired toy, a fixed bike, a board game played without ego or anger. Alex was becoming something more than a name. He was becoming a man capable of love, capable of sacrifice, capable of redemption. Lucas immersed himself in law. He devoured books on justice, ethics, corporate regulation, and advocacy. Every case he read, every scenario he analyzed, he tied back to the lessons his mother had taught him. Truth above all, courage in the face of corruption, and the responsibility to protect the innocent. He carried her voice in his mind, whispering instructions, advice, and sometimes sharp reminders. Liam, in contrast, immersed himself in art. His hands created murals, canvases, sketches that captured their mother's struggles, her victories, her fierce love. The colors, the lines, the vibrancy. They were a tribute, a chronicle, a visual testament to the life she had built and defended. Alex, observing both, felt both pride and grief. He knew that despite every effort, despite every attempt to repair the past, he could not give Bella more time. He could only walk beside her, holding her hand through every fragile day, witnessing the legacy of love she had created. They laughed together when he failed spectacularly at cooking, when he misread bedtime stories, when he tried to fix broken toys and only made them worse. They argued occasionally, sharp words that cut like winter wind, but always with resolution, with understanding, with the recognition that imperfection was part of the process. Through every mundane, every trivial moment, Alex began to understand the depth of life he had missed. He understood that bloodlines and wealth were meaningless without love, without connection, without the courage to put another's needs above your own. Bella's health declined slowly but steadily. She never hid it from Alex, never pretended that her strength was endless. She wanted her sons to see life's fragility, to understand courage not as grand gestures, but as persistence in the smallest acts. She held them, told stories, corrected mistakes, encouraged creativity, reinforced justice, instilled values that would outlast her. Alex observed her every day, absorbing lessons that wealth, power, and privilege had never taught him. Her legacy was no longer the empire she had battled. It was the family she had nurtured. The twins clung to her, their small arms absorbing every ounce of love, comfort, and instruction. Lucas asked questions about ethics, morality, and the laws their mother had fought to enforce. Liam asked about courage, sacrifice, and how to express love even in the smallest acts of kindness. Bella answered both with patience, wisdom, and clarity. Every answer, every lesson was a building block for the family Alex had failed to protect for years. Alex learned to comfort. He learned to soothe, to hold, to apologize without ego, to listen without judgment. He became a father not because he had rights, but because he had chosen to embrace responsibility. The twins, once wary, began to trust him not only as their mother's partner in rebuilding life, but as a man who could be counted on when challenges arose. Through these shared trials, Alex discovered a new kind of power, the power of love, resilience, and presence. Bella smiled frequently, but her smiles carried the weight of awareness. She knew every day could be her last. She knew the moments she had were fleeting. She chose to make them monumental. She taught the boys to play, to fight fairly, to forgive, to stand tall, to act bravely. Every lesson, every story, every embrace was a final gift. She instilled in them the knowledge that character mattered more than inheritance, courage more than comfort, and love more than legacy. Alex often caught himself staring at her, overwhelmed by gratitude and guilt. Gratitude for the chance to witness her courage, guilt for the years lost, guilt for the pain he had inflicted. But he never let despair take root. Instead, he focused on being present. Every breakfast he burned, every bedtime story he stumbled through, every tiny repair he performed became a prayer of atonement. Lucas and Liam continued to grow, inspired by both parents in their own ways. Lucas debated legal theories with a precision that belied his age, often referencing cases that mirrored his mother's battles. Liam painted murals of their family's struggles and triumphs, sometimes with violent reds and calming blues, capturing a spectrum of emotion that spoke louder than words ever could. The day came when Bella's breathing became fragile beyond repair. Her body weakened, her energy nearly gone. She called Alex to her bedside. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the machines and the soft whispers of the twins. She reached out, holding his hand firmly. "You finally chose love over blood," she whispered, her voice weak but proud. Alex pressed his forehead to hers, tears streaming silently. He felt the weight of everything, loss, redemption, love, failure, triumph, converge into a single searing truth. The night she passed was serene. No panic, no yelling, just quiet exhalation of a life lived with courage and purpose. Alex sat with the twins, holding them, letting them cry, letting them mourn, letting them understand the depth of their mother's love. Her funeral was private, intimate, yet dignified. No empire, no press, no legacy of wealth overshadowed the profound simplicity of love and family. At her graveside, Lucas held Alex's hand, steadying both of them. Liam leaned against him, tears freely falling. Alex, once the unyielding Vanderbilt heir, felt stripped bare. For the first time, he felt worthy. Worthy not because of wealth, not because of name, not because of power. Worthy because he had nothing left except what truly mattered. Family. A family forged from love, sacrifice, and truth. Not blood, not fortune, not legacy. Alex looked at the twins, their small, determined faces reflecting resilience, love, and hope. He smiled through tears. He had learned the ultimate lesson. The worth of a life is measured not in inheritance or empire, but in the love you give and the courage you leave behind. He picked up a stone, placing it gently on Bella's grave, a silent promise of protection, honor, and remembrance. He vowed to raise their sons in the truth she had taught, to honor her courage, to embody the love she had demanded he learn. As they walked away, Lucas and Liam flanked him, small hands holding his, anchoring him to the present, to the family he had once failed, to the life he would now protect. The wind whispered softly through the cemetery, as if carrying Bella's spirit, blessing them and giving a final benediction to the family she had built. Alex took a deep breath, feeling the emptiness and the fullness simultaneously. He had lost everything he had once valued. But in its place, he had gained the only thing that mattered: love, family, truth. And in that moment, the Vanderbilt heir, stripped of title and wealth, felt the unshakable strength of a legacy that could never be bought or broken. As Alex and the twins turned to leave, a soft wind carried a whisper through the trees, a voice only he could hear, faint and ethereal. Live well, for me, for them, for the truth. He froze, looking around, unsure if it was memory, spirit, or the beginning of something beyond life. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time he walked it with hope, carrying Bella's love and lessons forever. Final message. He once called her blood too common, but it was her heart that was made of gold, her will forged of iron, and her love strong enough to rebuild a broken man. In the end, the cost of his bloodline was everything he ever loved. But through her, he learned what love truly means. If you want,